passion for empowering people to enjoy their lives more often, Alicia not only helps individuals on a transformative journey to self-discovery, but also assists them in tapping into their intuition. Through her podcast, one-on-one sessions, oracle readings, and book club, she inspires personal growth and positive change, while helping people embrace their inner wisdom and make soul-informed decisions. Wow, welcome, Alicia.
Hi, Daphne. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, me too. Maybe nice to know for people. I know Alicia from coaching container that we both are in. We're in. I haven't
Yep.
seen you for a while, but I'm now in her book club where we are discussing the amazing book Seed of the Soul. And as I have experienced Alicia, she is extremely intuitive, and this is something that really energizes her and that she loves talking about. And to me, intuition is a very important vehicle to create a world that is grounded in well-being and innovation, to innovate. And so let's start with the question, what is intuition? Like, how would you describe intuition? I feel like that's
Mhm.
already a pretty complicated, big question, but let's go.
Yeah. I change my definition in the way I describe it all the time because I feel like intuition morphs and moves and shifts and changes with us. It's a very individual thing. So, intuition is how we receive information from our soul, from the universe for us. So, it's kind of like this internal mechanism that helps us receive whatever it is that we need, whatever guidance that is in alignment with our soul. And we receive it we might receive it from other people. We might receive it from a knowing. We might receive it from hearing something. There's different ways that we can receive intuitive hits or a gut feeling or a knowing, but it's coming from outside of us. Now, there's no real full way that we can completely understand it, I think, until we die or maybe never. But the way that I interpret it as it's coming through us, guidance for us, for ourselves, and we're receiving it from the universe. So I kind of think of it like you ask a question and then there's like this really excited like part of us, almost like a dog that's like, yeah, I'll go find the answer. I've got it. I've got it. I've got it. You've got the question. Perfect. I'll go get the answer. And so like it runs out to the universe or runs out to spirits or runs out to whoever has the answer and then brings the answer back and gives it to us in whatever way is going to be helpful for us to receive it. But that can happen instantly. It doesn't need to be a process of that portion of us going out to get it and bringing it back and it taking 2 months. It can happen instantly because time doesn't work the same way in the metaphysical world.
Wow, you've already said so many things. For example, time doesn't exist in the metaphysical world, and we can ask something to spirit or the universe. And so, for people who are listening to this, to understand it on a bit of a deeper level, because I know that when I was younger, this was definitely not the way I looked at the world.
Oh my
This
gosh, me
was,
either.
I did not even know this existed. And of course, everybody has had like a gut feeling or maybe about a person or like a situation where they were like, this doesn't really fully feel right. And so I'm very curious to your journey with intuition and your journey with that switch between how you first looked at the world and how you perceived it. And then what happened in between, like going where you went looking at the world in this different way.
Yeah, when I was growing up, I remember being really interested in like psychics and stuff. Like that was something that my mom would kind of talk about. I remember her having like some party where she had a psychic come. And so I thought that was really cool, but I didn't think it was for me. Like I was like, that's really cool, but seems really out there and not fully tangible. And then at a certain point, I got really logical, really into the 3D. Really into this physical world and was so grounded in logic like that. I wouldn't even watch like sci-fi films or shows because I was like, that's not real. Like I couldn't wrap my head around anything that wasn't real. And so I got really into that. And then it was, then at a certain point, I was like, okay, well, this isn't working for me. And small shifts started to happen. So I started to get more into the mindset work and understanding how the mind worked and how the mind would decide our paths, etc. And then as I got into that world, I started to realize, well, the mind isn't really visible. We can't see the mind. The mind is in the metaphysical as well. I'm not talking about the brain, about the mind. And so I'm starting to operate in this metaphysical space. And in that space, then I start to have like dreams. And I'm like, I think that there's more to these dreams. I remember being at a grocery store and I had picked up a bottle, like I think it was, I don't know what it was, a bottle of water or something. And I dropped it. And then I went to pick it up again. I dropped it again. And then I was like, why am I dropping this? Is there more information to this? And I picked it up a third time. And I started to realize that through things like that, I was receiving information, but I didn't know how to access it. So then I just went to go seek more help and get somebody who knew how to do this and ask them, like, can you help me access this more? And then I worked with shamans for a couple of years, really developing my intuition.
Wow, that's really cool. And I'm really wondering, because you said I just walked into some things that were like signs this isn't working for me. And maybe for someone out there who is very maybe attached to the logical, or that makes them feel safe, or they think like, I don't even know what you're talking about. What were those things that weren't working for you that were signs?
I wasn't enjoying my life. Like the
Mhm.
reality of it was I was doing a job I didn't enjoy. I was hustling. I was working my ass off. And I just thought that that was the way it had to be. I didn't really realize I had choice. I could switch my career. Like I really remember thinking, this was back when I used to work in television. I thought that that was the thing I was going to do forever, but it was not what I was meant to be doing. It was part of my path. It was meant for me as part of my path, but it wasn't what I was meant to be doing. I was good at it, but because I was being praised for it. Like you're good at this. You want to do doing the thing that you're being told that you're good at. And so I kept doing it, but my whole heart wasn't in it. And so I think that those situations where I wasn't fully feeling it were happening in my world. And so I wasn't in alignment with my soul. But I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know what any of that wording was. I wasn't happy. I was stressed. I was exhausted. And then books and information and things stumbled in front of my path where I was like, oh, what's this? And you pick it up and then have like these aha moments where you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't been seeing the world through this spiritual lens. I've been seeing the world through this very physical lens. And that was way harder than when I allowed myself to open up to possibilities of what else there could be.
When you describe this moment, I really go back to that moment where I had that. And for me, it was the manifestation course of manifestation paper, where she started to talk about natural laws and all of that stuff. And I was like, what?
What do
What?
you mean? Natural laws. I thought there was just
Yes.
gravity.
Yes, I don't understand. But it really, like, in this one instant, it just like shifted like it opened up a whole new field of potential, where there was this voice in the back of my brain just saying like, well, I don't know about this. I wouldn't go into this because this is a bit weird. People are gonna think you're weird. Let's not fully trust this yet. But then the more you go into it, for me, it felt as if my life became magical. Like the magic came into my life. And um, so just to go back a little bit more, so when we're talking about the spiritual and the metaphysical, we're talking about the non-visible, right? Or how would you describe that?
Yeah, I would describe it as the non-physical, what you can't see.
Mm,
So even if I'm looking at the computer screen right now, there's a distance between me and the computer. I can't see what's in there, but there's energy there. So
mm,
there's something there that I can access, but it's just not, I just can't see it.
yeah, yeah. And what were for you um the first, I imagine it like whispers, like even when you were talking about that moment where things were really hard and you started to feel like this isn't it. I feel like maybe this whole feeling of this isn't it might have already been intuition. What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my
Mm.
intuition was screaming like switch, 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 switch. And I was too terrified to switch, like just shift to
Mm.
make the change. Not to say like everybody needs to quit their job and move into something else, because that's not it at all. But there's this, yes, this knowing that there was something more, there was something else out there, but I didn't understand it fully. I didn't
Mm.
really know like what else there was.
Mm. So you said that you started working with shamans and they started to explain to you more. So what were some of the first things you learned about intuition that made you kind of go like, oh, hmm.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was trust. So I was working with doing a course called Embrace Your Intuition with a mentor of mine named Dee Monty. And she had a group program, and it was a way for us to connect with each other and share what was happening, what would come up. She would ask us questions, and things would come up. It wasn't so much that she told me anything, it was that she helped me realize I had it in me. And so she
Hmm.
helped me build the trust within myself. And so it was a lot of practice, a lot of testing the waters, a lot of me asking 1,000 questions. I asked absolutely. So if this, then this. And I think that part of my struggle, and I'm sure this is a struggle with a lot of people, is we're taught that things are one way. Like if this is the way that things are, we live in this physical world. We can't live in the non-physical world because we live in the physical world, but we can live in both. We are living in
Hmm.
both. And so understanding that a lot of the things that we believe and have been taught are very one way, but this was a way to open myself up to what if there's more than one way? And
Hmm.
and then as I was receiving information, as I was tapping into my intuition, as I was evolving and learning and starting to really understand what was able to come through intuition and how it was able to work, it the more I trusted, the more I trusted. So the more I practiced, the more I gained trust. The more I gain trust, the more I gain trust. It just is like
Hmm.
what you appreciate. So I had to trust in order for more and more trust to come. And the more you trust it, the more you're actually being fully connected with your intuition.
Hmm. Amazing. And would you say that that trust is a choice, or how do you, like, my need is like, how do you trust? Like, if,
Yeah,
yeah.
great question. For me, it was by experiencing. So I would
Mm,
practice asking questions, and this is what I help my clients with too, is like asking questions about absolutely everything, the small things, so that you can have that compound effect of trusting that your intuition is always guiding you. So if we start with the small things, do I want, is it in my highest good to have a glass of water right now, or is it in my highest good to have a coffee? And you get that answer of water, then you're like, okay, great. And then you drink the water and then you feel refreshed. And then you ask the next question, and you're consistently getting that feedback. You ask the question, you get the answers. And as you follow it, you build the trust. But I think you have to decide, I'm going to set out on a mission to see, like, well, what if this does work? What if I can connect with my intuition? What if this is just a big playful game and we can have fun with it? It doesn't have to be so serious. But as I go, I get to build that trust. It's like anybody, when you meet a friend for the first time, you're possibly a little standoffish of like, can I fully trust them? You maybe don't tell them absolutely everything about yourself. You might hold some aspects back, but the more you spend time with them, the more you get to know them, the more you share with them, the more you receive from them, the more you trust them. Same type of thing. You're building a relationship with your intuition.
Beautiful. And I love that you say that you can just approach it in a playful way, almost like an experiment where you're just like seeing if it works. And I really love that. And you just talked about that we can live in the physical world and in the metaphysical world or non-tangible world at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, the physical world is something I can see, right? So, and you also in the beginning said time doesn't exist in the metaphysical world. So, like, how would you put the two besides one another to just give people a picture of what it looks like or what it means?
Yeah. So the way I can picture it is we are living out our lives in a perceived timeline of we are born and then we go through our life at the speed in which we're going through our life, and then we die at some point. In the metaphysical world or in the unseen, on the other side, however you want to look at it, everything is happening all at once.
Oh, this sounds like this movie.
Yeah, everything everywhere all at once. I love that movie, and I think that it's such a great example of, wait a second, what? And it gets a little wonky. I don't even want to get into past I don't even want to get into multiple timelines like that. I'm not even going to go there right now, but just thinking, even if we just assume we have this one timeline, we have this one Daphne birth and this one Alicia birth and this one Daphne death, this one Alicia death. We live out this timeline. Well, our soul has lived potentially hundreds of times, like infinite numbers of times, because there it's just a consistent loop. It's not, there's no beginning and there's no end. It's just consistently going, but it's consistently going all at one time. It's like, it's hard for us to wrap our brains around it, because it's like, how does that work? But the reason why it's so hard for us to wrap our brains around is because we've been taught since we were little, this is how time works. You were born on this date. You don't know what time, when you'll die, but from birth to death, this is how you live your life. And we're not really thinking about what we can't see. We're only seeing what we can see. So we see time. We experience time. And on the other side, time doesn't, it's because it's all happening now. It's interesting because there's no rush there, because there's nothing to rush to. There's nothing to get done. You can't like get something done and accomplish it, because it's all squished into, think of infinity. Like if you think of your lifetime in infinity, it's very small. So your lifetime like it's very quick. I'm not an expert on this. I want to say that, but I do think like it's something that I've started to really wrap my head around more and more. And I think the more you talk about it and the more you hear about it, the more you can expand your mind to see how things could be possible. And I think that helps your trust with your intuition as well, going, wait a second. So then if we go back to the beginning where I explained, like, let's think of this as your intuition as a dog that's just going to go out, get the information and come back. I presume a golden retriever. It's going to go out, get the information and come back. And for us, it could be a couple days, it could be a couple months, but it's instantaneously on the other side.
Mm.
It could happen instantaneously as well. The stronger you get with building your intuition, the faster you're going to be able to receive your answers.
Mm.
But that is how it's like, it's not like your intuition has to go out and go, hey, sir, do you have the answer to this? No. Okay, go talk to this person. They'll give you the answer. Go talk to this person. And maybe that is the process that happens, but it can happen instantly.
Mm. So interesting. And um, before we get into what kind of amazing, cool, magical things we can use intuition for,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, why is intuition an important tool for entrepreneurs who want to innovate or create more well-being in the world?
Yeah. I think that without intuition, we're often tempted by ego.
Mm.
And so ego will be like, oh, well, that person has this and this person has that. And I want to build this because it's going to give me this. And there's a lot of comparison and not good enoughs, etc., that can come from the ego when we're working from an egoic place.
Mm-hmm.
And intuition doesn't care about that stuff. Intuition is not leading you to the more money or the any of that stuff that is going to fuel your ego. It's about helping you live a life that is in alignment with your soul, and in that,
Mm.
all the other things will come with it. I just heard a quote where somebody had said, like, if you find the thing that you love, if you find the thing that you love and you do that and you're really good at it, and if you really love it, you're naturally going to be really good at it because you're just going to want to know more and more and more about it, then obviously the money and everything is going to follow it. But
Mm.
if you're doing something, so if we think back to me working in television, it wasn't something that I truly loved. I stumbled into it. It wasn't like I was in school going, I'm going to work in television. And that's the
Mm.
thing that I want to do that. And here's the impact that I want to make. I stumbled into it accidentally. And
Mm.
so I was living a life that wasn't in alignment with my soul. And so my intuition wanted to pull me back. But here's the other thing I will say is, could I have lived in alignment with my soul and worked in television? 100%. I
Mm.
absolutely could have. I didn't have the tools at the time to
Mm.
support me in knowing my intuition and being able to follow it. So I could have built a life and found exactly what I loved within that world and been able to support people, which is like the biggest thing that I love doing within that world. It just wasn't in alignment at the time. It didn't work at the time.
Yeah. Hmm. So beautiful. So intuition is an amazing tool for people who want to live in alignment with their soul. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And I
And
think that if you're an entrepreneur and you want to be helping the world and you want to be making a difference and an impact, and I think if you're watching this, that's who you are. Intuition can help you make that impact so much easier than you trying to
mm,
battle with your ego to try and make the impact, because we're going to be tempted by our ego. That's just natural. But it's
mm,
coming back to what's in alignment for me, what's in my highest good, what's in the highest good of everybody involved. And your intuition can guide you down that path a lot easier than the temptation to be pulled off of the path.
yeah. This really reminds me of both situations with myself, but also my clients, where in the beginning of our coaching sessions, I always let them do a certain kind of meditation to find their why and who they get to embody to make this a success. And it's
Mm,
so funny because almost always they are like, huh? But this is not the answer I thought,
yeah.
and that is so cool that you can think something with your mind, which we would then call the ego or our personality, what we learn, who we learn to be. But then there's like this adventurous answer laying underneath that you're like, oh, okay. And yeah, and so sometimes I feel like it's really also an amazing tool for people who would like to play more with life or be more adventurous or not always know exactly what is going to happen. And that can be, of course, very scary, but also very exciting if you dare to give into it. But as we were talking about this in the beginning, you also said in the beginning, I didn't know this existed. And I feel that, of course, it is kind of changing, but still there are many people who might not even know the word intuition, but might not really actually know what it is or how powerful it is.
Mm-hmm.
And this makes me think about how did we ever lose this connection to intuition in our society? Like, where did this information go? Do you have any insight on that?
The thing that popped into my mind, so I'll trust that this is the guidance that I'm receiving from my intuition, is I saw an image of people living in like huts and like farming and hunting and gathering and knowing which berries to eat and which berries not to eat and trusting their intuition as they were moving through life, because it was the thing that was going to protect them above the fear above the fear that would kick in as well. But let's let that go for a second. But then I'm seeing all these like buildings and towers and hustle and bustle of the city where you're being pulled in every direction and there's advertisements being thrown in your face and life is a lot faster and louder and chaotic. And so during it, back in that time, intuition would have been guiding, and whether they would, I highly doubt they would have known the word. Maybe they would have. But that would have been guiding them. There would have been this inner knowing of, oh, let's do this. Oh, what if we traded this for this? Oh, what if, and all these ideas would come into their mind. Ideas being when they're dropping in, coming from intuition, to then being in this very busy world where everything's moving so fast that our ideas are not necessarily coming from intuition, but we're seeing an ad and going, I want that. And then dedicating our desires to like that, staying so focused on that and not allowing intuition to come in. So I think that that's like the general transition is what's coming through me now. So I presume that has a lot to do with it. But I also think that as us as individuals, we are born with this intuition being very strong when we're young. And we see a lot of, and I've been seeing a lot more of this, and maybe I'm just in this TikTok algorithm, but these children having invisible friends or knowing things that they wouldn't know or knowing their past lives. And people are recording it and putting it online. And that is intuition. They are so tapped into their intuition because there's no barriers yet telling them that that's not real or that's wrong or don't say that. People are going to think something negative of you. And so when we're kids, we're born very intuitive, and a lot of people are probably going, oh my God, I did have an invisible friend. And having that moment of, well, what was that invisible friend? Did anybody tell you about invisible friends, or did you just land with this invisible friend and then your parents knew what an invisible friend was? What's to say that that's not intuition, that you're able to see, or that connection to spirit? And then at some point, you might have been like telling your friends about this or sharing it in some way. And your parents are like, don't, you know what if we just keep this between us? What if we don't let other kids know about it? We don't know what they're going to think about it. So maybe we'll just keep this a thing that we share at home. And then the kids start to go, oh, this isn't a good thing. I'm not supposed to do this. This isn't safe. And so then they start to shut down their intuition from sharing it from other people. And it just keeps getting closed in and closed in and closed in more and more and more until we've completely shut it out and we don't remember that other way of living.
Yeah, it also makes me think about how I feel in at least our Western society. like emotions are also invisible, right? And I feel like that is also changing, but yeah, growing up, it was like I had all these talks about emotion, and I feel like the spiritual is kind of the same. Like for me, at least at home, we didn't have talks about spirituality or not even about emotions. It was more indeed about the physical, about getting a good job, looking good, performing well, having stuff, you know? And so there's also just a lot of emphasis, I feel, on more of the physical world. And yeah, but I like your perspective on how we did lose our connection to it, because as I have experienced, intuition can really come in when you become quiet and still. And so indeed, if you're living a very busy life, I guess we could call this step one to connecting with your intuition, become really quiet. Or what would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Quiet, self-aware, just like noticing, like notice. Awareness is so key. Because I think a lot of people correlate quiet with meditation, and you don't need to jump into meditation. You can, it will help. But you can also just decide, you know what, I'm going to sit for 5 minutes and not be on my phone while I drink my coffee and just drink my coffee.
Mm,
And that can be challenging for people in the beginning, but just starting to allow yourself to just be and just notice your thoughts. Notice, is information popping in? How does it come in? Did I generate that thought, or did it just drop into
mm,
my mind? And
mm,
I think that that's a way that you can start to see whether it's intuition, because we've been receiving intuitive hits or information from our intuition, and likely been following some of it this whole time. But when you are aware of it, then you're like, oh, I can actually tell the difference, and I can choose what path I want to follow, or what information is going to be the most beneficial to me, to my the most beneficial for my highest good.
mm, mm. Yeah, what then comes up for me is that when I started to connect more to my intuition, then after a while, because your head can get really in between what you are receiving, kind of, where you maybe start to doubt, is this my intuition or is this my personality? And you very often talk about this difference, right, between fear or intuition. So could you clarify that little bit more?
Yeah. Fear, a lot of people, that's the biggest thing that holds them up. I can't tell the difference between
Mm,
what's fear and what's intuition. Fear is don't do that, this could happen. Or if I do this, what if this happens? Or maybe I shouldn't do this because of this. There's like it's faster, and it's a lot of what ifs. What if this goes wrong? Intuition doesn't speak like that. Intuition is a lot more like, oh, this, like, I'm just going to be super, super whimsical with it, but like this way. It's like, that's not necessarily the way it shows up. Don't don't assume it's going to show up that way. It's not going to be super whimsical, but it can be, like, just to show the very big difference with it. It can be a little lighter. It's not, it's not, it's not scary.
mm,
Like, we can all think of a time where we knew something wasn't going to work out, but we did it anyways.
mm,
That was intuition. We knew it wasn't going to work, but we did it anyways.
mm.
It wasn't like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Alarm bells, alarm bells, alarm bells. Because if that was it, we probably wouldn't have done it. But we were like,
Mm,
this isn't going to work. And then we did it, and then it didn't work. And we're like, I knew it wasn't going to work. Why did I do it? Because intuition wasn't screaming in your face, everything's going to blow up if you do this. It's just
mm,
like, that's not going to work.
mm,
And so we did it, and we learned from it. I think that those are really good examples of going, okay, I knew that wasn't going to work. How did that feel? What was the way that it came through? Because it's softer. It wasn't screaming in our face, but that's when we can find out intuition versus fear. And you can kind of feel and tease out. But again, this is practice, right? Feel and tease out. Okay, so when I'm nervous about something, or I feel like I'm going to fail or whatever, it can feel this way. And you can start to identify with how fear feels in your body. Once you get to know what fear is, then you can tell the difference between fear and intuition as well. So we're paying attention to how intuition comes through, but we're also paying attention to how fear comes through and how fear feels. And when you get to know both of them as individuals, so even if we still think of this as a relationship, it's like intuition being this one friend person, and then fear being this other aspect. It's like, you get to know them equally, and you can appreciate them and love them for who or what they are. Fear is there trying to keep you safe, not let anything bad happen to you, etc. Really just coming back to like the potential of being attacked by a bear back in the day. Fear would be like, no, don't do it. Like, don't, no, bad. Like, oh gosh, what if? And that aspect of it, and you can hold it and go, I appreciate the fact that you want to protect me, and then you can release it. And intuition, it's just like, I appreciate that you always want to guide me. You always want to help me down this path that is going to benefit me. Now, here's the other thing too, is like, intuition is not always going to lead you down the path that you want to go down.
I'm laughing because I recognize it.
Yeah. There's so many times where intuition, you're just like, I can't tell you how many times I've been like sitting there, I'll receive information, and then I'm like, you sure? And then I'll just like check back later, like 100% sure, like consistently asking, because I'm like, I don't want to, or that doesn't feel right, or whatever. But there's something bigger going on that I can't understand at the current level that I'm at. So I just have to trust that whatever is meant to be, whatever I'm meant to learn, however I'm meant to grow, like if I'm asking for something, if I'm asking to be a more patient person, intuition is going to guide me to things that are going to test my patience, so that I can be given the skills to be a patient person. Do I want to be given those situations where I am forced to figure out how to be patient? No, I would like things to go smoothly always, but I need to, oftentimes it'll give me the experiences to learn through the physical world. It's not only the only way, there's other ways to learn these lessons as well. But often, especially in the beginning, our intuition will give us these ways for us to learn through the physical world.
First of all, I really loved you making the difference between fear wanting to protect you and then intuition wanting to guide you. That I was like, yeah, that is so good. And then also what this reminds me of, what you're saying, is how intuition is very non-linear, as we have already talked about, where it can give you a task or say like a guidance, and you don't know why, and you trying to understand why is like the worst idea with intuition. And then just doing it, and then it bringing you somewhere that was very unexpected for you to go to. And how that is also like a totally different way of relating to getting somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. And now we're of course curious to if you want to share, because you and I both know that to shift the belief, we kind of need 100 pieces of proof.
Yeah.
So maybe we can already start to build some trust into the person that is listening. And would you be open to sharing a story about intuitive messages coming in? What happens? I'm very curious.
Just trying to find the story.
Take your time.
It's funny. So I want to share what happened. So I asked my intuition. So I just want to give you the process that I just went through as you asked that. I asked my intuition, what's the story? And a story popped into my mind, and I was like, are you sure? And it was like, yeah, or this. And so then it showed me another story. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, I held the image of the one story, and the way it showed me was in an imagery. I saw an image of a full moon and a wolf howling at it. I knew that that was the story. That was one story. And then I saw an image of a man with a child. It was the other story. So it showed up as images. And so then I held the image in my mind, and I held the wolf and the moon on one side of my mind, and I held the man and the child on the other side. And I asked, which one, this one or this one? And kind of like shifted my energy and attention from one to the other, and then waited to be pulled to the direction of the one that it wanted, that intuition wanted me to tell. So, and then I just heard, you can't get it wrong. So I can tell either story, and it's going to support the people who are listening to this. So I went on a walk with my husband one day. And this was like when I was in the early, I'd say, few months of me working with the first shaman that I was working with. And she was having us like play with our intuition, test it, all the things that we talked about. And we're on this walk, we go on this hike, and just feeling really connected. I'm in nature, like just feels incredible. And then as we're walking out of the park, there's a man with a child, and my intuition was like, don't leave. And I was like, and I'm getting shivers as I said this. So I'm walking out and they're walking in. And I'm like, I get this sense of don't leave. And I'm like, okay. And then I like look at my husband, and he's also very intuitive. And he kind of looked at me like, we're not supposed to leave. And I was like, I have to go back. Like, we have to go walk back into like the forest, or at least like hang around. So I'm consistently checking in with my intuition, going, okay, well, what's going on? Like, and I don't have any answers. I'm not getting any, there's no information. It's just like, don't leave. And I'm like, okay. And so the man and the daughter had kind of walked in and walked around, and we were just kind of hanging out kind of close by where they would know we were around. And then they left. And after they left, I asked my intuition, like, can I leave? And my intuition was like, yeah. And it's like, okay. So we leave. This is a good example of how I will never know why I was supposed to stay there. I will never, ever, ever, ever know why. I can guess 1,000 different guesses, but I have no clue. And so maybe it was just that my energy needed to be near there. Maybe I really have no idea. Maybe they would have, I don't know. I don't know if it even has anything to do with the father and the daughter. I have no idea. But I know that I needed to be there because my intuition said, you need to stay. Like, you can't go. And I listened. And so that was an early on point where I decided that whatever my intuition guides me to do, I will listen. And that was a decision that I made. And not everybody needs to make that decision, but it was a decision that I made. I was like, whatever you guide me to, I'll listen. Just keep guiding me, and I'll keep following. And that was one of them. And so that was like, whether that was in my highest good, whether that was in their highest good, whether there was something completely unrelated's highest good, I trust that in that moment, I was guided to stay there for whatever reason it was, whether it was mine or somebody else's highest good. So it may not have, I talk about how intuition is for us. Through intuitive channels, we can also receive guidance for other people. And so in that, I trust to. It may not have been for me. It might have been for somebody else. And I'm just going to allow it to be, because it didn't affect any other part of my life. I just decided this is what will happen, and I will never, ever know. But I do know that I was asked to do something and I followed through on it. And I think that when you're asked to do something and you follow through on it, you'll be asked to do more things to follow through on it for the better good, because your intuition knows it can rely on you.
Yeah, that is what I wanted to say, because I think it had that effect, and you don't know, right? Maybe you would have gone back on the road and something could have happened there, or like, you don't know. You don't even know if it's about you, about the people that were there. And yeah, I think just this decision to listen to it is just a beautiful devotion to your intuition, and also a good example that it doesn't mean your intuition wasn't right or something was wrong because you didn't have some kind of climax or whatever happened. So thank you for sharing that story. And the last thing I want to ask is, you just shared that your intuition came in through images.
Yeah.
And we also already talked about dreams. What are some of the different ways intuition can come in and that people can start practicing with?
Yeah. I think it can come in. I would blow your ideas of limiting how intuition can come to you away. Like, just really try and blow it away. Sometimes I don't even recognize that it came through an image, but I wanted to break it down because I was like, oh, it came through an image. Let's break it down. Sometimes it comes through a voice. It was a voice that day that told me to stay. And sometimes to be honest, it may not have been a voice. It might have just been a knowing. I think that sometimes it can get blurred and we don't necessarily know exactly how. And that's okay too, but just trusting that it is happening. So sometimes you might see an image, you might just have a knowing, a gut feeling, as some people call it. It doesn't necessarily come through my gut always. Sometimes it's higher up. It can be a voice, it can be words spread out in your mind. It can be, you could be writing. Sometimes I do stream of consciousness and I allow my intuition to speak through that.
And stream of consciousness, for people who don't know, is just taking a piece of paper and without thinking, just writing, right?
Yes. So, but I'll ask, like, sometimes I'll connect with, if I'm clearly like connecting with my intuition, it might be like, okay, what do I need to know? Anytime I'm doing an offer, I will connect with my intuition and say, let me know what the offer is. And I'll just have the offer flow through me. Yeah. It's so much.
That sounds really cool. I haven't tried that yet.
I'll literally ask all the questions too and be like, okay, so what is it that I'm doing? Who is this for? Who is this not for? And I'll just get, like, I just sent you a sales page for an event that I have coming up. That was all just came through intuition, stream of consciousness, writing. So we have this access. It's so much easier. What could have taken me weeks to try and figure out is condensed down into 20 minutes of me connecting with my intuition. That's a huge benefit within the entrepreneurial world. Sometimes you'll smell something. So that one's a fun one. So you might smell, some people often will smell like their grandmother's perfume or something, and that will kind of let you know that she's close by. You might see signs. It can come through another person. So in our book club, a great example is Daphne asked a question, which is funny because it's about time. And then I was randomly on some website, not at all looking up what the question was, and the answer came through. And it was about the space-time continuum that we kind of talked about today, but I didn't get into the sciencey part of it. But the answer came through that way, which is wild. It's like intuition can pop through in different ways. Even the way, like, intuition guided me to watch that specific video. There was no reason for me to watch it. I wasn't going down a rabbit hole to like learn about something. I was just like, oh, well, what's here? What could I watch? And it was like, oh, watch this one. And so even in the guidance in that, it's trusting that your intuition can lead you to the specific information that you need through somebody else, through a video, through whatever, but always trusting. It's like this appreciation for, it's letting go of you thinking that you got all the answers yourself, like you went looking for it and you found it, and starting to trust that there was assistance that you didn't see that helped you find the thing that you wanted to find.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow, I think that gives people a lot to experiment and work with. And two different things that also came up for me while you were talking was shivers, like goosebumps. You had them. And also music. I hear a lot of people talk about music, that suddenly they hear a song and it has a very specific message that they really needed to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my God, I loved this conversation so much. It's so
Me
good to
too.
talk to you about intuition. You know a lot about it. I love it. And yeah, where can people find you?
Yeah. I think
And
the best way is my podcast. So the Fuel Your Fire podcast with Alicia Wood. You can search for that on any platform and you'll find me. Or you can find me on Instagram at Alicia, ALICIA.rose.wood. And the same handle is on TikTok as well. I'm there too. But yeah, reach out and say hello. I'd love to get to know you better.
so lovely. And before we leave, is there still a piece of intuition or wisdom coming through that you would like to share?
Yeah, if this is something that you want to do, make the decision that you will connect with your intuition regularly. So just set the
Hmm.
intention. I'm going to remember to check in with my intuition regularly. And that might be for what you're going to have as your first drink in the morning. That might be what you're going to have for lunch. It seems to like you can tap into your intuition on literally everything. Before you answer a question, checking in like I just did. You asked me a question. I didn't just answer it from my ego. I was like, what else do people need to know? And it's like, they need to practice. So practice it consistently. It's funny. Somebody asked me like, well, how long does it take for you to be able to like have a strong connection with your intuition? Because we all want to speed up the process. Your connection with your intuition is there. It's there. It's so there. You just need to get in the habit of listening to it and allowing yourself to recognize it. And so the more often you check in a day, the faster it's going to happen for you. If you were to check in once a week for a few months versus 20 times a day for a few months, you can, I don't know why I'm going to say this. I'm assuming this is for somebody, but you can bet your bottom dollar that you're going to figure out how to connect with your intuition so much easily, so much faster, the more you check in. It's not a once in a while thing. It's like every day, a ridiculous amount of times throughout the day. And then it just becomes part of you. You're just being your intuition. I'm not necessarily checking in with my intuition all the time. I know I move intuitively. And that's also like a belief that I've formed. I'm always following my intuition. So I'm never I'm never out of alignment. If I do feel like I'm out of alignment, then I'll pull myself back. I'll notice, okay, you're not in alignment. Let's pull back and get yourself back dialed in. But practice, 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 practice. Make the decision, set the intention, and practice.
I think that is a beautiful message to finish this conversation. And I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing this guidance and this wisdom with us. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you, Daphne.